me a second. All right, let's get started. So, thank you so much for coming. So this is the Thursday gathering for 135. So today's session from 5 p.m. is about data privacy, AI, and COVID-19. And today we have a wonderful panelist here. So I would like to pass to Steve. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Now, let me share my screen. Okay. All right. So I hope it shows well here. Still not used to, this kind of social distance, remote kind of technology, and hopefully everything works well. But, well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all healthy, safe, and energized wherever you are. Well, before we start, I would like to thank all of you for being here, Komura-san, his team, Lisa as well, to give us a chance to spend an evening together with all of you at Venture Cafe Tokyo. I'll be your host today for this session. I'm Steve, a data strategy consultant at Incudata. So basically, Incudata is a joint venture formed by SoftBank Group and Hakuhodo, as well as Treasure Data in 2019. And basically, we do CDP, customer data platform offerings together, all set together with marketing strategy planning, as well as implementations and solutions, how you do better marketing in the digital realm. So getting back to our agenda, as you know, the world has been hit by uncertainty for the past year. To many, COVID-19 that we have now is just a mere disaster, a devastating loss. But to members of digital native group of the society, the pandemic has been perceived as challenge that can be turned into opportunity to accelerate, opportunity to build, and opportunity to heal. Utilizing meaningful, insightful information material called data. As of spring 2019, so before the pandemic, right? Gartner research, this research company that I used to belong to, data utilization and AI use cases in numbers did not see high growth for the healthcare industry as compared to those of manufacturing, services, retail, and some others, as we know. But ever since the pandemic started, there has been debates over the urgency, right, of utilizing data, feeding machines with the data, and let machines assist medical workers, including doctors and nurses, to combat the COVID-19 that we have, especially for the patients' care and stuff. So actually, the most recent use case for this is from the UK, where we see the new variant of COVID-19. So the National Health System in the UK, the NHS, as you might have known, has pioneered an anonymous bank over 40,000 scans collected over course of the pandemic. And what they do is collects this database, from X-rays, CT scans, and MRI scans to speed up diagnosis of the disease, feeding the machine with all these data, enabling clinicians to implement treatment plans faster and more effectively, as well as allowing them to predict more accurately which patient may end up in critical condition. So as the UK is battling hard with the new variant of the virus, the Secretary of Health, Matt Hancock, says that the use of artificial intelligence is already beginning to transform patient care by making the NHS a more predictive, preventive, and personalized health and care service. It is vital. We always search for new ways to improve care, And the rest of his speech is long enough, so probably stop here. But basically, even the government of the UK says that AI and data, even in the medical world now, it's more than important, it's vital, right? As some might still have concerns over privacy and safety of their personal information being utilized to build up robotic assistants. So this evening, let us get into our discussion point about data privacy. What data privacy is, how important data privacy is, and how expensive it is to keep your data private, especially in corporate contexts, and how it can work hand in hand with AI to combat COVID-19 pandemic. So the scheduled discussion is basically in English mainly, with some additional commentaries in Japanese. で、本日のイベントですけれども、主体的に英語でやらせていただきます。日本語は一部のコメントや補足、そして Q&A のみになっております。時間の関係により、日本語の通訳は行っておりません。ですね、一部の方々には、ご不便、ご迷惑をおかけいたしますが、ご了承いただければ幸いです。So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our distinguished experts for today, my colleagues Karsten and Kanae-san. So Karsten is information security and operations expert, especially in financial industry. So Karsten has extensive experience in providing security and related advisory services to both Japanese and non-Japanese companies. Karsten also holds a PhD from the University of Cambridge in engineering and has a long-time career in investment banking and insurance companies. I think way before AI and all sorts of this data become a boom of industries like nowadays. And Kanae-san is actually my ex-colleague at Gartner. So before deciding to become a freelance advisor, Kanae thrived as senior principal analyst in personal technologies for more than 20 years at Gartner, Japan, and also focused on personal assistant, AI. Also collaborating with Gartner analysts from all over the world, she has published Gartner reports covering foundation of AI concepts and application, as well as its applicability in Japan context. And for myself, I've always been a strategy consultant, even before I joined my current company with Accenture, with Gartner. And apart from my core responsibility as a consultant, I also help out. I also co-found Rise by Inc., which is partly a social functioning kind of company. Basically, we empower socially incapacitated individuals with digital transformation related education and support them to land a career, either as project management member, data scientist, or system engineers. Please come by and have a chat with us after the session at the chat room if you're interested. And I think without further delays, I already talked too much, I guess. Let's start with today's first question about what data privacy is. And for this one, I think I'll pass the control over the session to Karsten for a while. Karsten, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much, Lisa, for the introduction. I'm very happy to talk today about data privacy. I had already a session 2 years ago on GDPR at Venture Cafe, and so this is now also a follow-up on data protection and data privacy. So let me take over, please, the screen.
You can share your screen, yeah. Sure.
Yep. So, like to start off, as we heard in the introduction, we use AI for medical analysis, for example, to help to develop new drugs or to help doctors to take the right decision. But also at the same time, people are concerned about data privacy, and they're concerned about how their data get handled, processed, and what is done with those data. So what is actually data privacy? Data privacy is a a branch of data security. So, and it's really about how data get handled, what kind of consents people give or the data owner gives, the notice, the regulation, and regulatory obligations. And more specifically, it's also how to share data with third parties, for example, and how it is legally collected and stored. So those are a lot of terms actually, and over the past years, this one got really very well defined in data privacy acts, such as GDPR, you probably heard about it. But we have it also around the world. So I have here some examples, but data privacy is now very strongly represented via privacy acts. And those privacy acts, for example, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is the European approach, it's now also adapted by Japan, or both of the acts are very close to par. And so what is now happening is we have more and more data, we collect those data, and those are personal data, or in the case of medical data, it's even sensitive data. So people are very concerned now. So the data owner, they will think, yes, I provide my data via when I have medical checkups or other interactions with the hospital. What's happening apart from using it for that particular task or area? For example, I have some, let's say, high blood pressure issues, and I provide my data, and then suddenly this data is used for something totally different, research, for example, or it's combined with some other data I provide via a different stream of data collection. And that's really something which concerns people, and that's where it is also very important for the companies that provide AI services to be aware of. And I think most of the companies, they're very much aware of, they have probably very good data protection governance, they have information security governance. But just to give you a little bit more insight, when we talk about data, for example, the ones like personal data and sensitive data. So there's a quite strong distinction. Like personal data is already like really your name, any ID number you have, like social security number, location, and generic data and biometric data. So those are the information which gets actually collected via your iPhone, via your car navigator, via your sport watch, whatever. But then you have, on the other hand, you have sensitive data. This is like something which is very personal to you. This is including like your racial, ethnic origin, political opinions, and so on. So those, and also of course medical data, and those are the ones where company, they have to take really efforts to protect those data from their customers, and also governments, of course, but also where the data owner has to be very careful how do they provide those data. And now with COVID-19, we saw actually that things often get more loosened in a way. So for example, we have now rights for a data subject. So a data subject is basically the owner of the data. So if I give my medical data, I'm the data subject. So I provide those data. But then also, like in a case of GDPR or the Japanese Privacy Act, there are actually rights a data subject has. And that's regardless if you have medical data or you have some other location data from your GPS system or like this. And that's, for example, the you have to provide them with access to personal data, like the rights, like when you collected those data, you have to provide like to show to the data subject those data. They have to be able to correct those ones or even erase those data. But also very important for AI then is really the restriction of data processing. So that's really when, for example, decisions are taken from your data, and they are taken by a machine like AI process. So they're not anymore taken by a human, and they're taken by machines. And then also the right for portability. So those are really the areas. Like this, a very brief conceptual idea what's data privacy. So how did it evolve before and after, or before and during the pandemic? We are still in a pandemic actually, and so yes, we saw actually before the rights were very well defined in data privacy acts. Most data owners or subjects, they were very much aware of it, and they also use their rights to intervene and to contact companies and say, please erase my data or please correct my data. Now, when we have COVID-19 right now, we want to move actually often quite fast as countries and governments, but also as companies to solve a lot of problems we face right now. And so a lot of data is collected, and probably there will be a case to find out later how we actually have to adjust our regulation. And examples, for example, the data tracking. Right now I'm talking in particular about Europe, many countries use apps on their mobile phones. And so if you get in contact with a person that's infected, it will automatically track your contacts. So, and if a person got in contact, they will be then notified by the app that they have to take a test if they are positive or not. So from the side of helping people and controlling the outbreak, this is a very good idea. But then on the other hand, it also interferes with some of the data privacy, because it shows really who did you meet, who did you contact, when, and all the details. So that's something, how will you reverse that one later? Because there will be, of course, interest in those data, and people like governments, companies will really push for continuing with those tracking. And there will be probably other advantages of doing so, but this is something which has to be discussed then. Then the one issue really I want to just put it up is like is COVID-19 the big bang for AI? Because when we see we work now from home, we changed all the approaches, like everything became online, we're collecting more data than ever, and we process that data and use those data. And those data will be also available for later use. And all the platforms that exist, like from Google to Amazon and Microsoft, they're all extending their services to basically for clients to collect even more data. And everything, like before we used to meet people, everything becomes now digital. So we meet digital, so it's more. So I think that's really something where AI is really benefiting from, because AI is like, one part is obviously the algorithms, the machine learning itself, but the other one is really the data, the underlying data. So yeah, just to summarize this one short, what I mentioned with the break like with the Big Bang, is like the increased computational resources we have available now, the exponential growth of data. Those are all drivers for AI. Focus on specific problems. For example, like as Steve mentioned, on the medical side, we have now a lot of breakthroughs because of AI. We use those data and we work together around the world on big projects and use those data. And that comes also to rapid knowledge engineering. And that's not just on the medical side, it's like across different projects, different ideas, and probably is also conceptual thing that really changed the mind of people, how they use actually AI. And I think also Maita-san will later mention very good examples in this case.
Right. Okay, sure.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
So let me also have a smooth over talk to the A platform. So in this case, when we talked about data privacy, and now we want to really relate it how this data is used in an AI platform. So if you think of in an AI platform, you normally have some sort of input data, and this input data comes from a data owner. So this comes normally, it's collected via a camera, via a sensor or speech. So that is most likely comes from some human, but it can be also from different processes, of course. But if we talk about data privacy, those ones come from human. Then those ones get processed actually in an AI platform, and then they come out, and then those information that comes out will be used for different IoT devices, for example, or will assist humans in certain functions. There are also sometimes really intermediate solutions where you have basically close on a device, so you do not go over the platform itself. You have some option to do that one. But here you can see really the data that are provided here get actually sent to a platform. This platform is most likely some sort of cloud solution. So whenever you use, let's say, your an iPhone, and you use some app or whatever, and you provide your speech, let's say like Siri or something, this data or this information is collected, but then it's processed in a cloud by a very powerful algorithm. And so just to round up the data privacy, so coming back here, so this one can be also related to the platform. So we saw just the platform here. We have the input data, we process the data here, and then we have some output data. So in a case here with the data privacy, we also can think of, as I mentioned, we have the data subject. Those are, for example, the customers. Then you have the data processor, which is the service itself, the AI service as an example. And then you have the data controller. Those are the company that provides, for example, the service. So in this case, data subject, the customer, they ask for a service. And so they, as the next thing, they will get asked by the data controller for consent. So they have to provide the consent that they say, yes, please go ahead, use my data when I provide them. So that's to be in line with the data protection.
So
and once they,
yeah,
yes.
it's those sentences that your website that you click on always says that, do you agree on this term and that term? And then people, without reading it, usually just click yes.
That's exactly this one.
So that's something that is also
it's a very good point, Steve, where exactly where you read those websites where it says, yes, please provide us with your data. And also often it says, please be aware we will share that data with third parties. So we will even provide.
The font size is small,
Yes,
so
yes.
they usually don't put it in the huge block letters for that, right?
Yes. So yeah, that's exactly the part. So you have to provide like a consent. So when you provide the consent, then the data processor, which is then the AI platform, they will process your data, and then they will provide the results to the data controller, and the data controller keep those records, but also will provide you obviously with the output, or with the result of it. But then if the data controller, for example, as I mentioned, sometimes you collect data for one purpose, but then you can use it later for different purposes, or you combine it with other data of that data subject. For example, I have an app which measures my health data, but then the same company provides also an app, let's say, for shopping. And then they might put those data together, and then they can profile the customer or data subject more detailed, and they might send advertisement, or they might even based on the shopping, they can relate it back to my let's say high blood pressure, because I always buy products that are causing high blood pressure. So in this case, it becomes a totally different viewpoint, but it's still the same data sets, but it's just by looking at them from a different point. So in this case, I need normally, I have to update my data consent, and then I have to then again allow or deny the decision if I provide those ones. But this one are often, it's very, let's say, if you start off with a simple example, it is very clear and can be also, as Steve, for example, say, how much does it cost you? How can you implement it? So from a very simple part here, if you have a platform like this, for example, yes, you have to ensure when you collect the data that you keep those data at the collection point safe, and also you only collect data which you allow to collect. But then when you have it at a platform level or at the data controller level, you have to keep those data again secure, but also you have to sometimes you have to just delete data after a certain while, because you're not allowed to hold them for a longer period, or you have to anonymize those data so they can be related back directly to a particular name or subject. So in this case, it's still, I think, quite easy. But then once you combine different ones, like let's say that you pass those data to a third party, let's say you do not do the full process on your platform, you rely on third parties and they rely on another party, then it becomes all very difficult and you lose track of your data. And that's a big problem for the data subjects. And that's, we see right now where it is very hard to really retrieve your data once they are out. So once your data are collected by one party, it's very hard to really say, oh, I do not want you to have my data anymore. You can do that, but those data might be already done with another party as well.
So be careful, watch out before you click the yes button over that.
Yes.
Privacy consent and stuff like that. So I'm sorry, Karsten, but in the interest of time, so probably if
yes. I'm also just, yes. I stop sharing, Steve. Yes. So if you.
Okay, I will share mine. Okay, so Karsten explain this. Now, the next question will be, especially for core players, it seems that you highlight that, okay, here, the data controller is mainly responsible. It's going to be mainly responsible for protecting data privacy, not only those data belonging to the data subject, let's say for their customers, but also data belonging to the company's other stakeholders, right? But then if you want to protect everything, right? Isn't it going to be expensive? Like everybody needs to sell more. And because of COVID, some industries, they just can't sell. And then they have limited budget, even for hiring, they need to freeze. Even, you know, well, basically everybody is not overflown by money at the moment. So if you can elaborate more about what kind of factors that need to be considered to make proper investment for data.
Yes. Yeah, I think from the investment side, it's really the basic investment is to have security, like information security, meaning you set up a governance in your company, like that's like the data controller side, but also the data processor side. So if you, for example, have an AI solution and you go via a provider for this solution, then both the provider, who's probably acting as the controller, and the AI platform, which is the data processor in this case, most likely, they both have to have a very strong information security governance. And they also have to follow their local Privacy Act. But then, for example, in the case of the GDPR, if they have European customers, even they are in Japan, they have to follow this Privacy Act for European clients as well. So the GDPR. So in this case, yes, to come back, the costs are involved is really setting up the governance to protect those data.
Okay.
And to very well define actually what data you collect and what you do with those data.
Okay, sure. Okay, sure. Well, it's not because I myself is a consultant. I asked this question, but then is it a good idea to outsource this kind of security service entirely out? Because, you know, if it's necessary because you don't have the capability, probably it's wiser for you to just hire, I don't know, some security consultants to do this. Or is it still vital for you to get the maximum impact for data privacy that you have your own data privacy or data security kind of team in the company? Or depending on the case, it might be more wise like to just outsource this particular assignments to external parties. What do you think?
Yes. Yeah, that's a very good point actually. If you compare, let's say, compared to the financial industry, which is regulated very heavily. So in the financial industry, you have really a very strong compliance and legal team and information security team. So, and if companies or like banks, for example, investment banks run into issues, they will be fined very heavily. In the case of startup companies, like let's say in the AI world or in companies that provide certain services, it's sometimes more difficult because obviously, yes, it from the knowledge you have among your experts is mainly about like the programming, like creating those platforms, like more technical expertise you have and some marketing and business expertise, but less compliance, legal and information security expertise. So on one hand, yes, it would be good. You can outsource probably those areas, or you can have expert helping you to implementing those.
Like yourself?
Yeah, maybe. Good question. So yeah, so that's the one. But probably there's also one aspect which might change actually in the future, because when you think of the current state, like the weak point in a chain is actually that we provide our data, but we cannot control those data afterwards. So we have to find a way actually where we kind of let somebody use our data for a certain time, but we have then the right, like we own still the data, and we might get even like charge somebody for those ones, or like invoice somebody to use our data. So that's, I think, the part which will change the whole data concept. Because right now it's really heavy if you get your data,
Right.
and particular AI, like this, you have big data, like, and there's a lot of very personal, like you have personal data, a lot of sensitive data often as well. Yes.
Well, yeah. So basically, you're saying, regardless of how much you outsource for your security or data privacy, in the end, it's going to be your responsibility to protect, because it's your organization and it's your, let's say, customers, it's your client, and then you're the one who basically, or you're going to be, in the end, you're going to be the one who has to be responsible for protecting data privacy.
Yes.
And yeah, okay, thank you, Karsten. And okay, so after this kind of high-techy kind of talk about data privacy and how expensive it's going to be, and then let's see if that data, we feed the data into the machine, and then going back to our current situation where COVID-19 is around, right? I also want to ask now our other distinguished panelists for today, Kanai-san, Maita-san, to basically say something about medical data digitalization. How safe is it with the current technology to let machines actually handle your medical records? As you know, as I said in the beginning, the UK now, your X-ray pictures, now AI handles your X-ray pictures. Even though in the end the doctors have a look at what AI said, but or he or she, like the doctors, check on it, but still, it's kind of you let machines handle your data. So basically, how safe is it with the current technology? And probably Maita-san will help us, to better stimulate our understanding towards this kind of particular question. Maita-san, probably you could start explaining your answer in Japanese, followed by some summarized English version of it. どうぞ。
では私らのご回答はですね、まず最初に日本語でお伝えしてから、その後英語で概要をお伝えしたいと思います。
Maita-san, could you speak probably louder?
これでいかがですか？聞こえますか？
はい、大丈夫
大丈
です。
夫ですか？はい、失礼いたしました。このどれほど安全かという観点を、一般的に見てごく平たく言えば、ある程度の安全が担保できる範囲で、安全な活用の仕方がの範囲で活用の幅が広がってきているという言い方になるかなと思います。技術的な側面から言えば、今、スティーブが紹介したようなメディカルデータを見ながらお医者さんが手術を行う、あるいは遺伝子情報などの解析をして、お医者さんの疾病判断を支援する、自己知能とかっていうのは結構日本でもそういったニュース聞かれるかと思いますし、日本でもそうしたユースケースっていうのは出てくるようになりました。あとは自宅で薬の飲み忘れを防ぐために必要な薬を出してくれる投薬ロボットというのもですね、世界で見ても結構使われていたり、いろいろな面である程度の安全が担保できる範囲で、医療にも活用されていて、いるって、マシンが医療データをハンドリングしているという状況であるというふうに思っています。ただ、ここで注目したいのは、できる範囲というのが技術的側面だけでなくて、法律制度の仕組みとか枠組みですね、あと倫理的、慣習的、ユーザー心理的な要はアナログ的側面にも大きく依存しているという点なんですね。そうした観点から見て安全かどうかといったことをやっぱり考えなければいけないし、おそらく考えて、導入にも至っている、導入するまでの過程で考えられているというふうに考えています。もっともっと言ってしまうと、可能な範囲はどの程度かとか、実際どれほど安全にそれが活用されているのかということについては、本当に国とか地域によっても相当違ってくるなということがあるわけですね。例えば、法的な面だけで言っても、医療データとか、AI に限らずなんですが、最新のデジタル技術は社会で取り入れるにあたって、やっぱり各国それぞれに法整備って必要な場面があると思うんですよ。 で、その取り組む意欲とか姿勢っていうのは、ただやっぱりまちまち、国によってまちまちっていうのが現状だと思っています。例えばですね、デンマークの例をちょっと挙げたいと思うんですが、で、なんでデンマークっていう思われる方もいらっしゃると思うんですけど、デンマークっていうのは実は日本のように少子高齢化とか人手不足っていう課題をずっと抱えてまして、実はその国家の成長戦略として20年以上前からデジタルの活用、社会への適用っていうのをものすごい重要視している国なんですね。で、そういう背景があって、その IT を有効活用するための社会プラットフォームの構築というものにもすごい早くから取り組んでいるということがあります。どのぐらいのどういうふうに取り組んでいるかっていうのは、ここにはご紹介しないんですけど、その規模というか、広がりっていうのは、行政とか企業だけではなくて、もう市民団体、市民、あるいは社会システムとか、要は国丸ごとで取り組んでるっていうことがあってですね、そういうことがずっと数年前から、何十年も前からやっていて、で特に数年前にすでに人工知能を国家の社会インフラに導入していきますってことを発表しているっていう、こういう勢いで、長期的にやってるところからすると、何をどういうふうに技術で扱うかの考え方ってやっぱり進化してきますし、逆にそういう背景を持ってない国では、その医療データを機械に扱わせるっていうことがどれほど安全かっていうのは、やっぱりデンマークのようなところとは、全然論点もレベルも見方も当然変わってくるかなと思うんですね。
結局、結論から言うと、ガバメント、政府がどれだけ責任を持ってちゃんとやる気出すかどうかっていうのが、肝になるっていう、お話と、
やる気はありますね。はい。
ですよね。なるほど。はい、ただ、その中でも法律の枠組み以外のところでも、なんかこう、気持ち特に日本だけじゃないんですけど、そのアジア、他国に関しては、やっぱその別に法律では OK だけれど、やっぱこういうデータ、ああいうデータっていうのがあって、なんか気持ち的にちょっと不安とかですね、そういったような患者であったりとか方々に対しては、政府はどういうふうなアプローチをすべきかっていう、多分一部の政府は、いや、スタンスやっぱ取らなきゃいけないから、別に、嫌って言われても、やりますみたいな、ところもあれば、やっぱり国民のお気持ちにもちゃんと大事にしたいっていうような姿勢もあればっていう、その辺は気持ちのところっていうのがどう捉えるべきかっていうところはどう
そこ実はすごい非常に重要な問題で、例えば今度中国の例を取りますと、中国なんか、社会体制として、国家体制として結構トップダウンでいろいろやってきているように、見えてますし、そういうところもあると思います。今回のCOVID-19 で、病院で、深センでしたが、深センじゃないですか、大規模な病院作って、そこで介護ロボットを導入するなんていうことを、もうさっさとできちゃうっていうのは、やっぱりそういうお国柄っていうのもあると思いますし、そこでも実は、じゃあ、人々は従わなきゃいけないっていうふうに従順に従っているのかっていうと、そういう側面も歴史的に見て、そういうことに、ずっと、そうだったからっていう側面もあるかも分かりませんが、やっぱりそういうところでさえ、でもやっぱりアナログがいいっていう人はいるよねっていう、そういうことにもすでに配慮を始めてるっていう段階なんですね。
はい、
要は政府だからって必ずしも一方的にやるということではなく、でそれが通るか通らないかっていう国の違いということではなく、結局やっていけばやっていくほど、最終的にやっぱりユーザーの気持ち、人の気持ち、いわゆるもっとアナログなところ、人の視点っていうのをきちんと重要視しなければ、あるいはそこを手つかずで放っておくと、もう絶対に抵抗勢力になるっていうことが、中国の例でも示されたんだというふうに考えています。
やっぱどんどんこうアプローチしつつ、成功事例とかもメディアを通して出しつつみたいな、要はどんどんその気持ちを、ソフトアプローチで変えるっていう方法がベストなのかなっていうふうに、捉えていいんですかね、そしたら。
そうですね、ソフトアプローチもそうですし、あるいは使われる人がそれをどう受け止めるのかっていう観点を、その戦略なり計画の中に織り込むべきだっていうことなんですね。人の視点を。
あとすいません、ちょっと楽しく話してしまってて、時間は時間なんですけども、英語で、そう
私が最初に言ったことだけ簡単に英語でサマライズしましょうか。
So English time, okay, sure.
So in summary, in English, how safe it is quite depends on both the technical aspects and the analog aspects. Analog aspects include laws, systems, and framework, ethics, customs, user philosophy, etc. More specifically, how safe it is varies from region to region and country to country. So for example, in Denmark, digital technology has been an important part of the national growth strategy for more than 20 years. In such countries, when you say that is this safe or okay, yeah, that discussion should be really matured from the many points of view. However, if we say that talk about the same things in other country, which hasn't been dealt such a IT strategy in country, not much. That level of discussion is completely different, right? So we can say that generally it's safe, like this.
So, and adding to that, what we just discussed in Japanese is that it really depends on how actively responsible governments in each country protecting or providing their people with great landscape of data privacy protection. So if they don't have clear outline and guideline, probably most, not only patients, but people in general, they're going to be reluctant to disclose anything related to data privacy. But then if governments are actively providing people with this data privacy landscape, protection landscape like those in Denmark, for example, and now probably the UK government is trying to do so as well, even though some people might be still reluctant, but many will say, okay, probably if this is for the sake of the COVID-19 relief or something, okay, I will disclose this, I will disclose that. My X-ray pictures, that's fine, you can use it. So it is really important for government to participate, to be actively involved in establishing this data privacy protection framework in order to give this kind of sense of trust and relief to the people about letting machines handling medical records. It's basically what we just said. And do you, for a minute or so, probably, Karsten, do you have any say on this?
Yes. Yeah, the part is also, if you use like a centralized approach, the part is that like, for example, you have the centralized place, let's say outside Europe, or you have it somewhere at a location that's not part of the personal privacy, like the Privacy Act of that jurisdiction, then how do you handle it? Like in many cases for privacy, like for personal data, for example, you're often not allowed even to store it on servers outside of your jurisdiction. For example, if I want to transfer data from Japanese people and want to store them on some other servers in Europe or other way around, I have to really check that it's within the boundaries of that Privacy Act. So in this case, it adds more complexity as well. And if you want to do, let's say, projects where you want to collect data from different jurisdictions or where different privacy acts exist, and maybe the data get shared and across different servers and stored or with third parties outside. So it adds up more complexity. So it's often, if you see it, let's say in the case of the UK, it's only UK, for example, if you start off, that's within one jurisdiction with one. But now even UK, now you can see after UK left the European Union, they also will start probably with their own Privacy Act now. And then, so if they do it with some other states in Europe together, it has to be also defined. So it's much more involved.
Right. So you're saying that probably if we do this at a national level, let's say Japan, Denmark, UK, then it's viable. But then when you want to go cross-border, probably it's getting more complicated than you can imagine because of different jurisdictions have different law regarding privacy, and different
Yes.
governments take different
Yeah.
approach, have different tones over this idea of letting machines handle this kind of data. So at this
Yes.
moment, you were saying that it is safe enough or feasible enough to do this landfill medical records at national level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think also at the moment, because people are kind of in a state of emergency situation, people often then look at that more to solve a problem now and then probably to visit afterwards and to maybe adjust. I mean, there's probably a lot of adjustment in regulations after we get through this whole COVID-19 case, because the regulations are not fully there in many cases, but regulators kind of waived now, like across regulatory bodies, they waived certain things just to let companies continue to work. For example, if you think of working from home is a good example. You normally have very strict regulation how data are handled within a company. Now you send all your employees home and they work from home, and how can you ensure that personal data and sensitive data are handled in the same way as you have it in the company? But right now people do it, and the regulators who look after those companies, they advise, but it's still they have to adjust on those regulations, and the companies have to adjust. So I think we will see, some changes there.
And in case of this data, medical data handled by machines, then the hospital, is it, or health institutions are those who need to be responsible as data controller, or you think that responsibility can be shared with AI vendors or?
Yeah, I think probably the one of the good ways would be probably, as Maita-san mentioned, the data bank. For example, like the idea of a data bank to have data kept there, and then it's like you have maybe a consortium of companies put their resources together to safeguard those data, or governments provide assistance there, and that would be maybe one way. Or,
to sustain the anonymity and neutrality, as said, probably that's
yes. But really, yeah, I mean, a good example would be, for example, some people do now DNA tests, and they get a DNA kit and they send it off. So let's say if I order DNA kit for Japan and I get it from, let's say, from the US or from China or somewhere, and I send it back for analysis, but then what's happened to my data? So my actual DNA data, even I get the result back, but my sample and my results are also with a company who actually analyzed it, and it's most likely outside the jurisdiction where my privacy law applies.
Okay, sure. Okay, thank you, Karsten and Maita-san. Well, in the interest of time, let's go to the final question for today that we discussion for today. As we are now in Japan, getting back to Maita-san, let's talk about Japan then. Like, is Japan ready to work hand in hand with, we call it living data, as in data is not there just stay anymore, like it moves. Data moves, and people use data use other data, and algorithm use data moves here and there, and then it tells you something, right? So is Japan ready to work hand in hand with this living, moving data to combat COVID-19 in medical terms? This includes, data, patients' data in machines. This includes, can be as high tech as probably in the future. It's not going to be the nurse who give you your medicine. It's going to be the robots who will deliver your, who deliver tablets or medications for COVID patients, because that helps preventing outbreaks, right, in the hospital, for example. っていうことで、日本はいかがですかね、マイタさん。データでコロナ戦う覚悟っていうのは日本は、もしレディーであればなぜですかっていうところと、あともし レディではなければ何が足りないで、大体、まあ、どうしてもやっぱこうコロナは何かしらの形でこうデータでなんか、まあ、sooner or later みたいな形で解決しなきゃいけないのかなと思うんですけども、いかがですか？
はい、極めてグッドクエスチョンなんですけど、実は、このコロナパンデミックということを通してですね、その日本はレディではなかったという事実が浮き彫りになったと思います。何を言ってるかというと、海外ではできていて日本ではできてないっていう比較に、国も企業も人々も気づかされてしまったわけですね。例えば、これ医療に限らずなんですけど、リモート勤務とか業務のデジタル化について遅れてるとか、デジタルサービス導入が遅れてるとか、あるいはそのマスクの在庫管理と配布の問題、これも台湾なんてもうあっという間に1月以内に結構解決というか、アプリケーションという形で、まさにデジタルですよね。で、解決しましたし、それからあと、給付金の支給とマイナンバーの紐付けなんていうのは、結構、これはなんでマイナンバーが使われないんだろうみたいな、そういうこともあったわけですよ、日本では。で、などなど、その結局ビジネスの継続性から社会インフラ、行政サービスに至るまでいろいろなシーンで、海外ではデジタルの力でできてるのに、全ての国でじゃないですけども、こういうことできてるのに、日本はできてないっていうことに気づかされちゃったっていうのが現状だと思っています。で、だからそれが結局はそのデジタル庁の創設っていう動きにつながっていってるっていうのが私の理解なんですね。だから、そもそもその一方で日本人自体がその個人データっていうものに対する意識も低い、リテラシーが低いっていうこともあるかなと思うんですね。先ほどカーステンとスティーブ話してたのとように、本当に言われるがままによく確認もしないで自分の情報を提供して、そこ規約に OK して、OK って出てきたから、ちっちゃいが本当だからよく見もしないで OK して、安易に個人の極めて私的な情報を自分で登録しちゃってるっていう状況が結構起こってますし、一方で、その自分の情報を企業に提供することをためらう、怖いって思う人たちもいて、要はあんまり企業側もやっぱり安心安全に使えるっていう状況の中であんまりないし、ただ単に、限られたデータを自分の中で集約して、でその中で統計取って、ある程度広告発信するみたいな、その程度の活用に限定されてるっていうのがあると思うんですよね。果たして日本はそれでいいのかっていうのがあって、そこで出てきたアイディアっていうのが、先ほどカーステンがちょっと、お話しした情報銀行、パーソナルデータトラストバンクっていうのが英名なんですけど、情報銀行っていう考え方なんですよ。つまり、そういう議論がようやく出始めてきて、そういう準備段階にあるっていう状態で、レディーか、
それが、
レディーじゃないですね。
そういう期間があっても、これ別に批判じゃないんですけど、要は事実の理解として、そういう期間が出てきてても、要は個人レベルで、あまりデータプライバシーなんだっけとか、そういったような知識も、なかなか足りてないっていうところで、どうしてもそれが肝なのかなっていうふうに個人的には思いますけど、要は、外に政府がこういうふうに言ってますとか、情報銀行があってこういう役割ですみたいなことが周りにあっても、メディアで、例えばテレビとかで何かやってても、データプライバシーなんだっけとか、ディスクロース、例えば公開しても、いいデータと個人情報と公開しちゃうとまずいとか、またそのチャンネルはどこなのかみたいな、そういったような個人レベルのデータプライバシーに関する知識っていうのが、ものすごく足りてないところで、なかなか政府からこういったような施策とかがあっても、なかなかレディーにはならないっていう理解になるんですかね。
ご指摘、本当にごもっともで、その通りなんです。で、もともとだからさ、途中で言ったように、日本はそのデータに対するリテラシーが低いっていうのが、これ、個人に限らずね、全体的に、そこがベースにありますっていうことを考えると、まさにおっしゃる通りで、実はこれ、そもそもの発案というか、イニシアチブは経産省と、あと総務省等々で、あと内閣官房も関わってるんですけども、そもそもこれはもう民間でやるべきだっ 政府がこういうのやりますとかじゃなくて、民間で主導でやるべきだっていう考えがあって、今だといろんな日本にいるIT 関係の事業者とか企業とか協議会とかが集まって、日本 IT 団体連盟っていうのを作ってるんですね。だからそこももういろいろなどうやって個人に浸透させていくかということを考えてますし、要はだから客観的に見た今後の課題としては全然認知度が上がってないし、それをどうやってメリットも認知してもらうのかっていうのは客観的に、要はだからリサーチをするアナリストだったりアドバイザーっていう視点から見ると、そこは重然たる課題としてあるかと思いますし、その課題については気づいていると思います。
そういうガイドラインとか法的フレームワークを作るだけではなくて、それの個人レベルまでのソーシャリゼーションといいますかね。
そうですね。
でも
実際にこれが始まったら、まさに個人が、要は自分の情報を予託して、要は生活者たる個人が予託した自分の情報を生活者である自分のために運用してもらう、それが情報銀行っていう概念なんですけど、世の中にたくさんある企業に対して一人一人がそのメリットを検討して、規約をチェックして開示していくっていうのは結構難しいので、それを情報銀行が代わりにやりますよ。で、その情報を大事に金庫のように守ってくれて、こういうところとこういうところはオファー欲しくないっていう、こういう領域とかこういう企業は出したくないっていうような、そういう条件を自分で私が言ったら、預けた情報を安全に守って、条件に沿ってサービスを受けたい会社にのみ出してっていうのをやってくれるし、その成果を快適に返してくれるっていうのが一応情報銀行の役割ですよっていうふうに、要はルールメイキングとかそういう役割とかそういうのが決まったばっかりで、まだその情報銀行っていう業態がスタートしたわけではない、そういう業態を持っている企業がスタートしたわけではないんですが、これ出てきたら情報を予託する個人だけじゃなくて B2C やってる事業者は必ず今後情報銀行というプラットフォームが必要になってくるんじゃないかなという、感じですね。
そうですね。
だからメリットは何なのか、個人にとってメリットは何で、企業にとってメリットは何なのかっていうのも全然知られてないし、ましてやそういう事業をスタートしたどこか組織がすでにあるわけではなく、ただ枠組みと、あとそれは認定制度っていうのがあって、それを先ほどIT 団体連盟っていうのがやる役割も持ってるんですけど、その認定をして、ここだったらこれは安全な情報銀行ですよみたいなのは、いくつかできて、それを使っていく企業も個人もみたいな、そういう段取りだと思うんですよ。
そうですよね。
そういうことも全然だから知られてないじゃないですか。
そうですね。これ話せば話すほど、時間もあれ時間なんですけど、話せば話すほど、やっぱ情報銀行さんと一緒に個人向けの教育とかなんかそういうのを作ってもいいよなみたいなアイディアになっちゃうんですよね。
本当にまさにそうですね。教育分野なんかもそうだし、あと医療に関して言っても、例えば旅先での医療受診とかセカンドオピニオンとか、今医療データって情報化され、電子化されて管理されてるって言っても、ある病院のカルテが他の病院とかクリニックで共有されてるとか、ナレッジが共有されてる段階では全然ないじゃないですか。だから、それがその情報銀行によってどんどん促進されたりとかすれば、セカンドオピニオンとかにも使えると思うし、あと長期の健康ライフログとか、今回のことを言ってしまえば、そのライフログ、行動記録、バイタルデータ、起用書、カルテ情報、そうしたものを掛け合わせて、こういう生態とか行動パターン、こういう行動パターンの人はこういう抗体持ってて、コロナに感染しにくいとか、そういうこともなんか発見してくれるかもしれないですし、なんかね、抗体とかワクチンとか、そういうものの研究開発にも生かされるかもしれないななんていう期待を個人的には持ってるんですけど、だからそういう意味でデジタルサービスとか、ある程度コロナで広がってきた普及と活用が加速しているということを考えると、それを背景に情報銀行の認知度の必要性、非認知度とか必要性も上がってきて、顕在化してくるっていうこともあるかなっていうのが今私の期待感ですね。
はい、なるほど。そうですね。わかりました。長くなっちゃいましたけど、英語でさまってみるといかがでしょう？
Let me try. Okay. In terms of ready or not,
It is
Japan
not.
is not. It's of course not. But the situation is really Japan has been so much delayed in digitalization or digital transformation comparing what is we have just noticed about this. This is a situation, and this situation has led the formation of the digital agency, so-called digital Joe. But basically, Japanese people also have low awareness of personal data. Awareness means low attention kind of things. So, and this is not only about the people who data owner to provide their own data to the company, but also the company to use that data. So this is not a good situation.
And also bringing up the other part of important discussion that we just did, it's also about the knowledge at personal level, where people should be equipped with a minimum degree of knowledge on data privacy. Otherwise, I mean, regardless of how hard you try as a government to establish the digital or like Joho Ginko information bank and stuff, people are still not, if people are not well informed about what personal data or what data privacy is, probably it's going to be hard to make Japan as society kind of ready to combat COVID-19 with.
Correct. Yeah. So, that situation is right. The reason for that personal data trust bank, needs of personal data trust bank, which has been just rule made and formulated as a framework. And yeah, but I expect that the first business case of this personal data trust bank will come this year, hopefully.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Well, so thank you very much for explanation. But I have a very simple and a very pure question on what Minae-san said. And sorry, Maita-san said. So who should own data bank? Because like yeah, probably like the awareness of Japanese society to data privacy is probably quite scarce or less, you know. However, I personally feel like I don't want a situation like a big brother is watching you, right? And I was very simply wondering who should actually own the data bank, or how the data bank is owned, you know, in what way? So
ownership. Data bank.
Yes, exactly.
Good question. Actually, data bank should be dealt, how can I say, independently or neutrally. But let's think something like a financial bank. But is there neutral or how can I say non-private company? They are independent, but they are not neutral, right? But there's some system to grant that certification that you can do the business of a financial bank.
So,
right.
Okay.
This is the same concept. Same concept can be adapted to the personal data trust bank.
So your point is probably data bank has to be neutral, and therefore we need somebody or an agent or a framework that can guarantee the neutrality of the data bank or information bank. Or in regards to neutrality, I guess information neutrality, Karsten, because I'm sure you're really good in definition of words in regards to data and security. How should we define like neutrality? What kind of framework or agency or regulation that can actually guarantee neutrality And
Yeah.
again, going back to Komura-san's question about the ownership of the data bank, right? Well, what do you think? What
I mean, yes, back it became very like people became very much aware of it, and they ask already those questions like with AI. One is the data privacy, and the other one is the ethical use of AI. So those two parts, they get discussed in many forums and like this. And yeah, I think it's a difficult decision if you give it to a government. If you trust the government or you have like a sort of certification process for companies to follow certain guidelines, you can do that. But like there are also other opportunities, like let's say you can have some sort of let's say an example would be kind of blockchain solution where actually the data owner holds the key to their data, and then they can control who has access. So you take away the centralized form where you say the data is looked after by a government or a consortium of companies. It's basically a platform where the data owner directly has control via a key. So, but then again, it's often not only the one where you store your data and how you provide access. It's still very difficult, I think, technically also to control if somebody has access, how they actually use generally the data, because you have to trust them. They might provide you with a request, I will use your data for advertisement. And you provide them your data for in belief you provide it for advertisement or medical research, but they might use it for something different. So how will you check on this one? So those are other aspects then as well.
It's hard to define boundaries, right? So what do you mean by medical research? What do you mean by advertisement? From
Yes.
where is medical research, right?
Yes.
From where is advertising, and
yeah.
Right. So
and how do you check actually on those ones? So you need somebody else. Again, even you provide your data are saved in a secure location. You provide access, but then the third party who requests that one, how do you check on them that they really do it as they propose?
So we need to pinpointly or directly answer the question, right? So who's going to be the rightful owner of the data bank? Well, it's going to be there sooner or later. And as Maita-san said, in Japan, it's already there, Joho Ginko. And now, I suppose in Japan, well, the government is the one who come up with this initiative. And I think in the meantime, I mean, what is my personal point of view, in the meantime, where we are still finding for this neutral agent to control that Joho Ginko or the data bank, probably the government is going to be in the meantime, again, temporary, going to be the rightful owner or controller of the bank. Is it okay to answer? I mean, to assume that, or
government doesn't own the bank. I know that the stakeholder are discussing about the bank and personal data trust bank currently will not be the owner of the Joho Ginko actually. But our main stakeholder in this discussion is Information Technology Federation of Japan, ITF Japan, which is responsible for the grant of certification to each Joho Ginko.
I see.
And a government, which is Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, MITI, and the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communication, MIC, and Cabinet Secretariat, they are now a position like an observer. Yeah.
Okay. Also, they observe how the bank works, but then they don't own. Instead, it's made like a consortium of different, let's say, companies too. Right?
So in some case that Joho Ginko, which is not secure, could be in the market. But to prepare, prevent this situation, ITF Japan is doing that deal of the grant of certification to each bank.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think Komura-san, the answer to your question from three of us is going to be the well, while defining ownership is hard, but then when we talk about main administration of the entity of the organization, it's going to be a consortium, not even a government. So it's a consortium of companies, and in Japan it's an ITF. But then we still have problems over here, so we need to later make sure that the consortium, the composition within the consortium, or the company's organization who form the consortium is representative enough, either for the industry and for the people. And I think that's the next level of discussion where we need to kind of
You can see those information on web. And
Well,
I'm not talking about the only the information knowledge of my own right now.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm not an anarchist or cyberpunk, and I understand that maybe this is probably this is gonna be a biggest problem when the data bank is gonna be formed, because I think there'll be still a problem so could we still trust the government or even the consortium, the structure where even you say okay, it's going to be the consortium that would control or that would manage the data bank, but there'll be still the structure of a big guys and we are a people, kind of thing will remain. So yeah, I understand there is ongoing discussion right now, and then you share that the same kind of problem with all. So yeah, thank you very much. That was really inspiring, and then I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And talking about time, actually, Komura, so should we answer some of the questions that we have over here, or should we move to the networking space? So what do you think?
Well, I'm the one who kind of made it longer than it ought to be. It really up to you if you would like to answer each of questions but here that's okay. But it really depends on the audience, I guess. Maybe they've been listening to the discussion for quite a long time, and then they might feel a bit kind of wanting to kind of stretch a little bit. So in that case, maybe Remo will be better.
Okay, sure. Should we just answer one question and we move to Remo then? Just answer one last question and we can move.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Okay, sure. So this this question from Lisa, let me pick this one because it's the topic that's quite different from the stressful data bank information and stuff, not readiness kind of thing. So is there any system or service? The question is is there any system or service that can allow us to track where our personal information is disclosed or used for? Basically the movement of your data and stuff like that. As far as it's okay. Well, for this question, actually, if you ask some companies like Gartner, they have better answers. But since we are not with them anymore, according to probably your personal knowledge, Maita-san or Karsten, is there any system or framework or service that we can actually try to track where our information is? Oh, it's being processed, or it's being used, or it's being stored somewhere.
Was probably, if you think of the data, we have a very wide range of data. So our data can range from images to videos to voice to GPS locations to health data. So for each part, probably if we think of our personal data, let's say if we think about our personal details, we can track those ones. There are tools out there where we can track actually. But if we want to really track if somebody has our health data now, it will be probably very difficult, I would guess so, because those information you have to really look. I mean, it would not be that your health data is stored on a network that is can be checked by the like normal internet or like this. So in this case, you cannot hack it at the moment. So I think, like, for example, if you think of images, you can tag images and check on them. You can watermark. You probably can do similar things with voice and other one. But then when you have those, when you provide those data, you have to provide, you have to include some sort of tagging on this one so that you can check later where those data are. And I think that's a shortcoming right now. But most likely those data would go off into some databases that they get harvested and stored in some databases where you cannot check where they are actually.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much, Karsten, for your elaboration on this, and hopefully that answers your question. And as Komura-san said, we are not going home. We are going to our networking, virtual networking space. これからですね、バーチャルネットワーキングスペースに移りたいと思いますが、Lisa, could you probably give us or
Yes, thank you very much for the very informative session, and I think it was a great opportunity for us to also think about the data. So I post the link for the virtual networking space. So if you have time, that'd be great if you can join and then have more conversation with the wonderful speakers. Okay, thank you so much. Let's see you at the virtual networking space.
Yeah, give us some 5 minutes or so to join the networking space.
Yeah, sure. No worries.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
It was really a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.